Welcome back. All right, so in my continuing look at teams in the off season, these are not season previews. Again, I'll just throw that out there. I want to talk about Vegas. Vegas for a couple reasons. First off, a lot of losses off this team over the last couple of years, and secondly, I forgot to mention Olofsson in yesterday's video where I talked about players being added. So there you go. I did want to right that wrong, and I want to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights to do so. So when we look at the Vegas Golden Knights, this is a team that won the Stanley Cup in 2023. And, that was what they were building towards, year six and all that. But they've lost a lot of players. So looking at the roster that won the Stanley Cup and going over the key guys that are gone, Chandler Stevenson, who was in Vegas for quite some time, really, really useful second line center for them. They're going to miss him. Jonathan Marchessault, a 40 goal scorer. You don't replace those easily. Riley Smith, who was traded, of course, so they could keep Barbashev. Understandable they made that move, but still, it does change the identity of the team a little bit. Phil Kessel was on that Stanley Cup winning team. He hasn't played since. I think his career is probably done in the NHL at this point, but he still was part of that roster. Amadio, who leaves as a free agent this summer. Carrier left as a free agent this summer. Cotter traded away. Martinez leaves as a free agent. Bluger left as a free agent. Miramanov traded to Calgary. Logan Thompson traded away to Washington, and Laurent Brossoit ended up back in Winnipeg for a year. So that's a lot of players. That is a large portion of that roster that is gone. And I do think that we're finally looking at a team in Vegas which you no longer can look at and say this is a favorite to win their division. So 2022-2023, when they win the Stanley Cup, 51-22-9 record, 111 points. 14th in goal scoring and 11th in goals against. This past season, 45-29-8, 98 points. 12th in goals for, 12th in goals against as well. So right around average, a little bit above average. They make the playoffs. They lost against Dallas in the first round. Hard fought first round. But this is a team that I feel like has definitely lost something. And then you look at the losses this summer. Losing Martinez is huge. That's your shot blocker, right? Martinez, one of the best shot blockers in the history of the game. Again, Marchessault's 40 goals and just some of that identity with guys like Amadio and Carrier. Carrier's just a tireless worker. So they're going to miss him in the lineup. Now, the general manager, Kelly McCrimmon, has a job to do this summer that's not going to be easy. With Robin Lehner on LTIR, they have $1,310,016 in cap space. I know the LTIR thing's going to get brought up. I will get there. The coach, Bruce Cassidy, might be the one thing that if you're a Vegas fan, Cassidy is a great coach. He can get the most out of a team that you wouldn't expect him to. I know that from his time in Boston as well. There were times where I felt like Boston overachieved while he was there. And I think he can do that for Vegas as well. So when we look at Vegas' top six, clearly that first line should be Barbashev, Eichel, and Stone. And Jack Eichel has been every bit of the star that Vegas had hoped when they picked him up. But that $10 million cap hit is a lot. And then you look at the rest of the top six, how is this going to work itself out? So on the left side, you could have Olofsson and Dorofeev, right? Which one ends up on that second line? I like Dorofeev a lot. I think he should get that shot at the second line position, but Olofsson has been a goal scorer in the past. This is a team that's going to be goal challenged, so maybe Olofsson gets the start of the season on that second line. We'll see. Hurdle and Carlson. Does Hurdle stay in the middle? Does Wild Bill end up on that second line and maybe Hurdle ends up on the wing? We'll see. But then you've got Holtz and I guess Brisson may end up being in that top six as well. This is a team that could be a lot younger, could look completely different. Holtz as well. Holtz is a player who is a goal scorer, at least projected to be a goal scorer. Had his struggles at times in New Jersey, but also showed enough in New Jersey that clearly Vegas said, you know what, we're going to take a chance with him. And so they've given him that opportunity. But this is definitely a team that's a little weaker. If you look at the top nine for the Oilers and for the Canucks, and I would even say of the Kings in that division, I think you can make the argument that Vegas does not have a top nine, which is as solid as those other three teams. Now, again, the first year Vegas was in the league, had a lot of discussions about how bad they were going to be before that season started. And then when the season started, that conversation changed immediately. The blue line is still excellent. And one thing, if you're a Vegas fan, that should give you some hope here. That blue line is pretty darn near perfect. You got Hanifin and Pietrangelo. Now, there were discussions about whether or not Pietrangelo might get moved for cap space. In this case, I think you might look to move Pietrangelo to maybe beef up the top 9 a little bit. And with that depth on the blue line, they can afford to do that. They got McNabb. They've got Theodore. The first year in Vegas, there was talk about how Shea Theodore eventually was going to be a Norris Trophy winner potentially and all this. I don't hear that talk now, but Shea Theodore is still an excellent top 4 defenseman. Haig and Whitecloud, excellent young defenseman there. And so I think they've got a blue line which can still contend for a Stanley Cup. They may need to play a more defensive style of hockey. We may see their goal scoring low, but their goals against really low this coming season. Although with their tandem being Adin Hill and Elias Samsonov, we shall see, right? Samsonov had an up and down season for Toronto, maybe the best thing for him to get out of Toronto. The problem is he also had a checkered track record with the Washington Capitals. But this is where you can point out as well, hey, Adin Hill was just kind of a nothing trade at the time they picked him up from San Jose, and San Jose didn't have to give up a lot to get him from Arizona, so maybe Samsonov ends up, having the same kind of run that Hill had. And maybe. He may very well be able to do that. The goaltending and the defense should be able to keep them in a lot of games. That offense, that first line should be fantastic. Maybe you move Stone down to the second line just to spread out your scoring a little bit. This is where people are going to say, well, they're going to put Stone on LTIR. If you put Stone on LTIR, this team doesn't make the playoffs. This team doesn't make the playoffs without Stone on the lineup. So the idea of, they could just put Stone back on LTIR, they won't make the playoffs. Any advantage you get, who cares if you don't make the playoffs? So the idea of, they'll just go and get other players. Well, but without Stone, you're weakening your top 9. Mark Stone is still one of the best two-way forwards in the game when he's healthy. Based on his play against Dallas, I don't think he was healthy in that first round. I really don't. Either it was a matter of he wasn't fully healed up, or he just wasn't in game shape for playoff hockey, which is a thing. And so I don't think it did Vegas any favors. Yes, they got that cap relief and they picked guys up. But in the end, they lost in the first round. And they would have made the playoffs if they'd had Stone in the lineup anyways. Maybe they'd lose in the first round if Stone had played, say, the last 3 weeks of the regular season to have that cardio that you need in the playoffs. But I don't think they get past Dallas in that first round. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you're trying to create cap space, having draft picks helps. Vegas doesn't have that. They don't have their own 2025 or 2026 first-round draft picks. They did have their own this year. They picked 19th overall. They pick up Connolly. That's a controversial pick based on, I guess, some social media activity. I stayed away from it. I'm staying out of it now too, but I'm curious about whether or not they sign him and get him into the lineup and how quickly that takes place, because Vegas could definitely use an infusion of youth with some talent, and Connolly's seen as having that. They only had 4 picks in 2023 and 2024. This is not a team that is awash with really good young prospects coming in, although both Brisson and Dorofeyev, I think, have a lot of top 6 upside. If they both realize that this season, that'll help with the scoring, but I still think this team's going to have its scoring troubles. As I said, $1.3 million approximately in cap space with Leonard on LTIR. I pulled that off Cap Friendly last night. It's a good thing I put this board together last night, right? Although I could have gone to Puckpedia and got that information today, so Puckpedia. But April 22nd of 2024 is a day that people point to, right? Because this is where you're getting ready for the playoffs. Carrier, Mantha, Stevenson, and Stone were all cleared to play in the playoffs. What's interesting is the only player of those 4 that's still with the team is Stone. Carrier's gone. Mantha's gone. Stevenson's gone. And they don't have the cap space right now to bring players in. And yes, at the trade deadline, they may be able to finagle some cap space, but they're going to have to stay above the playoff line to really make that work. And this is a team that's going to struggle. I still see those comments of how weak the West is compared to the East. No, if you don't have a good team in the West, you're not going to make the playoffs either. You have to have a good team. When half the league misses the playoffs, you have to have a good team to make the playoffs. It's just, you have to. Back in the 80s, you could have a iffy roster and be below 500 and still get into the playoffs. Those days are gone. I'm very grateful those days are gone. I'm very against expanding the playoffs. So I guess the question I have with Vegas is, will the defense and the goaltending be good enough to get them into the playoffs? Will Aiden Hill be 100% and able to carry that load as a starting goaltender? Which I don't know if last year told us one way or the other. He looked great at times. He struggled coming back from the injury the first time. He was better coming back from the injury the second time. In the playoffs, their goaltending was good, but is it good enough? And so that's an honest question mark. And again, the offensive depth, I do have some questions with that as well. Can Hurdle play that full schedule? Does Olofsson bounce back? What's going to change? What are they going to do? Because if Vegas gets off to a slow start, I have no doubt Kelly McCrimmon will get aggressive about trying to change things up and make sure they stay in the hunt. But they've lost a lot from that Stanley Cup winning roster. This team's going to look very different this fall. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.